Yes, indeed, folks, you're listening to Blue Please here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, Total Biscuit. BlizzCon stuff. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about more BlizzCon stuff. BlizzCon stuff. So, what are we going to talk about? Well, there's a few things we can say. What we're going to do is finish off the raid stuff, and then we can go on to... I don't know. Should we finish? Yeah. Let's finish off the raid stuff, because there were some Q&A questions. There weren't all that many, I must say, which is actually a good thing. Either it means they've covered everything you want to hear, or they've actually filled the time with real content as opposed to idiot Spurge Lords asking incredibly terrible questions.
Why is this minor lore character over here now, Mitchin?
So, Raids and Dungeons Q&A, doo-da, doo-da, let us do the Q&A, ooh-da-doo-da-dee. Will there be a better system to prevent ninja looting on the LFG system, ooh-da-doo-da-dee? There are a couple of improvements in Cataclysm. The loot systems are more strict and people aren't able to roll on something they can't wear. They could already... Well, they can actually do that already. I wasn't aware of that. Well, I suppose now they've got the disenchant mechanic, it doesn't really matter much, does it? Yeah. Thing is, you're never gonna stop ninja looting, because that's the nature of pugs in general. It's also the nature of these ridiculous loot systems. At the end of the day, if you are at a boss encounter and you down the boss encounter, at the very basic level, you are entitled to roll upon it. At the very basic level. Of course, that's not morally acceptable. It's like, at the basic level, you'll go out for a meal, and you get a free bread basket. You are entitled, as a single diner, to eat the entire bread basket. But it wouldn't be very polite, because the other diners would get nothing. Thing is, you're still entitled to roll on it, at the very basic level. And no doubt people are raging, oh my god, you can't say that. It's like, no, at the very basic level. Let's take humanity out of the equation. Let's take all common sense out of the equation and just take it down to very basic game mechanics. You killed the boss. The loot belongs to the group. You have the right to roll on the loot. Of course, they've put in systems that prevent you from doing so. I mean, I'm totally in favor, obviously, of disabling the ability of people to roll on stuff they actually can't use. That's fine. That's totally fine. There's no way a clothy should be rolling on a piece of mail. The fact that that could even happen is ridiculous. There was an excuse up until Wrath, where you had the DE option. Thankfully, you don't really have an excuse for that anymore. But always bear in mind that people's idea of ninja looting is very flexible depending on what they would like. Let's say you're gonna pug, and you say, and you're not the pug leader, oh, this amazing magic hat is reserved to me, and then someone else rolls on it, are they a ninja looter? Well, no, because people didn't agree to your stupid rules. If everybody agrees to them, and then someone does it anyway, then sure, but like I said, people use the term ninja looting far too liberally. Next question. Now that 10 and 25-man raids have the same difficulty, how do you balance them and make them the same difficulty? That's a really bad freaking question. It's redundancy, isn't it? You know, now that these are the same difficulty, how do you make them the same difficulty? Well, balancing is very hard, they said. Really? But it's also a very high priority. Encounters should be roughly the same difficulty. It might take some time, but developers will get them to the same difficulty. The thing is, they don't need to get them to the same difficulty, and they've said this before, and they need to stop pretending that it's absolutely 110% possible to balance each individual encounter that way. You can't. What you can do is balance a raid dungeon. It is possible to do an overall balance. You know? Let's say, you know, and this is a ridiculous concept, let's say arbitrarily that each boss has a difficulty rating from 1 to 10, and this dungeon has 4 bosses in it. Both the 10 and 25-man modes have a total of 40 difficulty points within said dungeon. However, they may be distributed in different ways. Say the first encounter might be a difficulty of 6, for the 10-man group, but only 4 for the 25-man group. Whereas the second encounter might be equal, so it might be 5 and 5. Things like that. You can balance it over the course of an entire dungeon. You don't have to balance individual encounters. What I've seen, by the way, I've done a little bit of 25-man, and what I've seen is that they've done a pretty damn good job of it, but there are obvious differences. Like, say, Valiona and Thuralion on 25-man mode versus 10-man mode. Well, what have you got to worry about? It's harder on 25-man mode. You want to know why it's harder on 25-man mode? Because you get multiple of those engulfing magics, and you also have a lot more people, so you have a lot less space to work in. You can't really stack up because of the engulfing magics, and if you end up getting 2 engulfing magics in your group at the same time, then you could be in an awful lot of trouble. That said, there are other bosses that do, without a question, favour 25-man over 10. Like, for instance, Maloriak. Maloriak blatantly favours 25-man. Why? Because you could actually spare an extra tank to split the ads into 2 and just tank them at opposite sides of the room, and you won't even have to worry about it. Whereas in the 10-man mode, you just can't do that. You won't have the DPS to kill it. So you got more margin for error on the 25-man. Thing is, that's okay. That's the way it should be. They really should not be attempting this perfect balance on a encounter-by-encounter basis. They should simply do it on a dungeon-by-dungeon basis. That is the way it should be. The only problem, I suppose, with that is about the bloody flexible lockout system. It's a shame that they had to put that in there, because that's going to make their balancing job a whole lot harder. Because what you could technically do right now is you could say, oh, right, well, this encounter favours 25-man mode. Switch over to 25 for this one, beat it easier. Okay, well, this one favours 10. Okay, split into 2 10-man groups. It's, you know, that I hate that idea. That idea is horrible. So, I suppose maybe they do have to do that as a direct result of their own silliness. Flexible lockout is just stupid. I'm sorry, it is. So you don't get to raid this week, or you don't get to raid today because someone is late. That is a guild problem. Doesn't need to be fixed by Blizzard. That is a guild problem. So your dudes didn't turn up. Get better dudes. Have spare dudes. That's an organizational issue. That's a logistical issue. That's not something that Blizzard has to fix. And of course, they create an entire new selection of problems by just implementing this damn system to begin with. Now they do actually have to balance everything on an encounter-by-encounter basis, or else every fight's going to min-max to hell between 25 and 10-man, and the 10-man progression path is going to be rendered totally irrelevant. Anyway, next question. With the flexible raid lockout system, is there anything to prevent people from leaving the group as soon as something bad happens? It will get better over time. As players get better and get used to the new system, you will likely get a much better pug experience. No, you won't. You want to know why you won't get a much better pug experience? Because you have said without a shadow of a doubt that you should be in a guild. Which means the only people that won't be in a guild are bads. It's as simple as that. Well, I would like to play suboptimally today, so I'm not going to be in a guild. Right. Alternatively, I'm an obnoxious twat, ergo I can't get into a guild. Or I can't stay in a guild for more than 5 minutes without making people want to throw me off a bridge. No, it's not much better pug experience. Don't lie, it's going to be a much worse pug experience. And that's how it should be, folks. Harder dungeons, harder encounters, more benefits for guilds. Make pugs die. Pugs suck. No reason to be in it. That said, the question is fairly valid, honestly. Well, something bad happened, let's just leave because it doesn't matter, because we can just switch to another one. Again, all very easily avoided by guilding. Legendary weapons with 10 and 25-man lockouts being combined in Cataclysm. Are there any plans to go back to Ulduar and Icecrown Citadel in regards to Shadowmourne of Valinor? Are we going back to change the way the fragments drop? That's a good point. Will we bring that up? We'll bring that up in the office on Monday. It's a great suggestion. I have no idea what they're even talking about here, so... Next question. Are you changing BRD? Yeah. So, BRD is problematic according to them. That doesn't really... I don't really blame them. BRD is so freaking huge. I mean, what the hell do you do to BRD without completely breaking how cool an instance it is? I mean, it's too big. There's just no question about it. It's cool, but it's such a relic of the time when you spent 5 hours in a 5-man and still didn't manage to kill everything. Oh, man. This is a good question. Oh. Ooh, yes. This is interesting because this question seems to have been partially influenced by me. I don't know if this is the case, maybe great minds think alike, but comes on and says, I'm concerned about encounter mechanics, like more hard stuff. My main concern is that the binary sort of thing, unfortunately this guy can't really speak properly. My main concern is, and I'm translating here, the binary kind of thing, that certain mechanics are big and flashy or something really subtle or obvious but won't kill you immediately. Is there any middle ground? Even then, that still doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So, as far as I can tell, what this guy is basically saying is there any middle ground between big flashy mechanics that kill you immediately and... I actually don't know. I don't know what he's saying here. Let's read the answer. Maybe we can translate it. We talk about that quite a lot, and it's actually a pretty nasty design problem. Tanks and healers have a lot of things on their hands. If you're taking a little bit of damage, you're probably going to blame the healer. Well, you shouldn't. We're trying to make things more visual, and hopefully you won't have to look at a buff stacking for an encounter. One of the new things we have in Cataclysm are meters that the dungeon guys can script to make some of the mechanics more visual. Like the Blind Dragon Antramides, which has a sound bar. Yeah, it's true. It's funny because, like I say, that question sounds very much like what I said. Wow, what is a big ear? The bigger and more flashy a mechanic is, the more likely it should be to kill you. Whereas the subtle stuff should be damage, but not immediately lethal. Unless you're doing really, really hard stuff, of course, in which case, by all means. The visual stuff is good. The bars are really good. I like them very, very much. Although, what I've said before is the bar on Antramides is stupid because it's not really a bar, and you can't tell exactly how full it is. It's really hard to tell on first glance. It should have a traditional bar. It shouldn't have that little blobby circly thing. But hey, whatever. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there should be a variety of abilities. Why wouldn't there be? There should be a middle ground between subtle and, oh my god, this is a giant fireball from the sky. I'm really dumb if I stand in it. That's the whole point of good raid design, isn't it? To make sure that there is a reasonable amount of flexibility. Okay. Are there any plans to make legendary weapons guild-bound due to achievements? Guild-bound? What, where you can pass it around in a guild? Oh. Seems ridiculous, doesn't it, when you think about it? That said, I'm sure some people would quite like to get rid of their Sulfaris Hand of Ragnaros. And we picked up the bindings, we didn't know what they did. That was true, actually, back in the day. Nobody had any idea what that was all about. Oh, what the hell am I talking about Sulfaris? Seriously, I'm talking about the Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Although Sulfaris does kind of count, although not so much. The bindings were BOP, if you remember correctly. It doesn't seem a particularly good idea, does it? Now, there's one last thing I'd like to cover, and that is in a bit of information that was posted by Zahim regarding the Raids and Dungeons panel and raid philosophy. Quote, ever since Ulduar, philosophies for heroic raid dungeons and lockout systems have been steadily evolving. Ulduar presented players with the first ever opportunity to toggle the difficulty of a boss for greater challenge and access to better loot, but the system was somewhat confusing, requiring players to know how to trigger heroic difficulties through specific gameplay mechanics that varied by encounter. In Trial of the Crusader, players were granted the ability to toggle heroic difficulty directly through the UI, but could only change it once. In Icecrown, we melded the mechanics of Ulduar and Trial to give the players a flexibility to choose between normal and heroic difficulties via the UI on a boss-by-boss basis, and we're still making tweaks. Yeah, it's just a shame, really, that they couldn't go back to the old way of triggering heroics. I mean, when you've got that map interface that explains all of this stuff, I just don't see why they couldn't go back to the neat version of it. And the thing about the neat version, bear in mind, ladies and gents, is that the old way of doing things, either Sartharian way, I'm talking about the Freya way, the Flame Leviathan way, is that you got those non-binary hard modes. And my concern is that, if you recall a while ago at one of the games conventions, Tom Chilton was saying, we are looking into making sure there was more than just an easy and a hard difficulty. Of course, he didn't say that, because he'll never admit that normal mode is too easy. He said normal and heroic, whereas we all know it's easy and hard. The problem is that if they're going to stick with this system, it just seems so very, very unlikely that they're going to go back to the idea of non-binary hard modes, which, as far as I'm concerned, were the optimal and the best way of designing raid content. Why? Because it gave people flexibility to take on the encounter on their own terms, but without sacrificing the integrity of the particular fight. It's just such a shame now that they've gone back to binary, which, as far as I'm concerned, is incredibly lazy, and it doesn't seem like they're going to change that anytime soon. My name is Total Biscuit. You are listening to the one and only Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. After the break, we'll be coming back to the general Q&A. Oh, God. Oh, why? Why, oh, why, Delilah? I would love to know, but there is no reason behind it. No rhyme, no reason. Oh, so very horrible. Let's play some music to hopefully flush that out of your mind. Bit of pinball map sounds like an idea as far as I'm concerned. This is by a band that you should know that are now rubbish. They are called In Flames. Enjoy.